Hello and welcome to the Third Space podcast. This is Bennett, and before I jump into the episode introduction, I want to give an announcement for the podcast. Daniel and I were talking after today's episode, and we think for 2023 we want to change things up a little bit, change up the structure of the podcast, or maybe even give it some structure at all. Our podcast schedule has been all over the place really since we began. Since we both have jobs and we're both busy and maybe can't research topics or little games or whatever. We haven't scheduled them at regular intervals, and especially in busy times like the holidays, we've kind of skipped a period of time. Anyway, that whole lack of structure and routine, we think, has made it a little bit more difficult to maintain the podcast. So what we are going to attempt to do going forward is make more frequent, regular, but shorter episodes. So this, of course, we will be experimenting with over time, and it may change, and yeah, maybe we will skip some if life gets in the way. But our goal is to have a weekly episode around 45 minutes. If we push past by a little bit of time, maybe to an hour, that's okay. But we really want to limit ourselves to an hour, and we're going to try to balance that shorter duration while still maintaining the third space goal of the podcast. And that means that our topics will probably change a little bit, such that we don't have long intro segments. We just jump right into some topic that interests one of us. And we're also going to try to do a little bit better of a job sharing the topics that we come up with, maybe having Daniel lead an episode and then me lead an episode. That's a little bit more wishy-washy. So we're going to experiment with that. And it may work, it may not quite work, but we're going to try to stick to it a little bit and see how it goes. And I know our vast, immense audience will certainly give us feedback or not. But if you do want to give us feedback, we always forget to mention this, but you can send emails to us for whatever reason to mail.thirdspace@gmail.com. Very professional on Gmail. So please feel free to do that. And that's the announcement. So enjoy the future episodes. This episode, however, does not fall into that pattern. This episode is episode number 45, and it's entitled Chat3SP. So yeah, I tried. Okay, maybe the title is not the best, but the whole episode is really about ChatGPT, the very popular AI chatbot that has kind of taken a lot of discussion over the last few months. So Daniel played around with it. He really was impressed by it and had a lot of thoughts. And I always find AI to be a very interesting topic. So we jump right in and talk about ChatGPT for most of the episode. So if you like discussions about AI and society and technology and that kind of thing, that's exactly what we talk about here. We both complain a little. We both muse on what a good future might be with AI everywhere. So anyway, that's the introduction for this episode. Hope you enjoy, and I look forward to our new podcast format in coming episodes.
It's a podcast, Bennett. It's you and me. It's called
The Third Space Podcast. I jumped in there.
You did. You got it.
I was ready, man. You know what? In the past, I've been really critical of your musical introductions, but today, it's a new year, my friend, and you know what? I'm here for it. 2023 is going to be the year of Daniel's musical Third Space Podcast introductions. It's going to be wild.
Man, it's a new year. It's a new you, me.
New
Yeah.
intros or not.
Or not. I actually was doing our right as that we were about to begin, and I thought, oh no, I don't have anything.
So
I
you
had
actually
not
did think
considered
about it before pressing the button this time, which is that's different than usual. New year, new you.
Yeah, wild stuff. I want to talk about something that's on my mind as an English teacher lately.
Okay, all right, go for it.
Chat GPT.
Oh, you want to get right into it?
I do. I just want to launch into it because I have like lots of thoughts.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
go for it. What is that?
it's a like a generative language AI system where you can, chat. I guess it's designed as just a chat bot, essentially a very sophisticated chat bot that might even give Google a run for its money in terms of you can ask it questions and it'll give you answers and you can even use it to say like what's the best pair of shoes if I want to go on short jogs, and it can give you a list and quick reviews and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It can do so much. In fact, there's lots of videos out there for here are the different uses. It can translate really well. It can explain complex. You can say explain existentialism to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and it will. So you can and it can write. I asked it to write. I'll be teaching Fahrenheit 451 this year, so I said write a 5-paragraph essay on the symbolism of fire in Fahrenheit 451, and it produced a very structured, because that's the thing a 5-paragraph essay is: as your intro, 3 body paragraphs, conclusion, transitions, and it did a good job talking about the characters. I mean, and I would not be able to tell it was generated, is the thing. It really is a coherent model of language. I've
Mm-hmm.
asked it to tell me a story, rewrite the American Civil War with a fictional account of the American Civil War, and it talked about magic and magicians and sorcerers going to war. But it gave the correct dates, so it was like weirdly intertwining some truth and mostly fiction. But it's just so. Danielle's a big X Files fan. She write a new X Files episode.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you could probably even write like a reunion episode, and it would even incorporate that sort of thing. And it knows all the characters, and it's just thoroughly impressive. And there are all these headlines out there, like the end of the college essay, the end of the English essay as we know it, and there's this sort of doomsday. Oh my gosh, that AI, the stuff that we just talk about in like dystopian lit it's here. It's finally here in the form of ChatGPT, and I'm sure that's all super inflated and super overstated in some ways. I don't think. I mean, this was released, I believe, in like November, so it's
Yeah, it's
pretty
pretty
new.
pretty new.
And I don't think students have regularly caught on. And there's like, like from my understanding, educators across the world are kind of going, okay, well, what do we do? I mean, and so there are different sides. There's like let's update honor codes and thing in our plagiarism policies to include no use of AI, including ChatGPT. That's one, what I would argue, ineffective route to go, right? Like, okay, just just don't do it, don't use it. It's kind of like saying don't use Spark Notes.
Right.
And I think my school has that position: don't use Spark Notes. And then some people have a different, like I have a different philosophy of like it can be a great tool, but I also know I'm speaking a little bit like if I say use it as a tool, like read. So if you're reading Shakespeare, for instance, it's difficult. Like as a teacher, I say something like, all right, we're going to read this in class aloud and struggle with the language. And if you need to go home and reread it in the No Fear Shakespeare or the Shakespeare or whatever translation, there's all these different translations
Let me
out
ask you a
there.
question. Conceptually, what's the difference between a student using ChatGPT to aid in their essay and a student using a spell checker or a grammar checker to aid in their writing of an essay?
Okay, well, that gets to a big idea I want to talk about, and I guess I can make that transition.
Well,
I'm in.
you lead me where you want to go
Okay,
on the topic. I am familiar with Chat GPT. I've heard people talk about it. I read about it a little bit. I haven't used it personally. I've used similar AI tools. Like we did an episode on AI Dungeon
yes,
some time ago, which is based on the same technology as ChatGPT.
right, and it really impressed me. And then this impressed me further. Like I've been reading some articles and stuff too, and I finally just created an account and started playing around. And that's when I was like, whoa! Like, that's when I got excited. I don't know why, but reading about it, I don't know. We've been on the cusp of sort of AI. Like this doesn't shock anyone to talk about, or it's not a concept we haven't thought about before. So when I'm told there's this great one out there, uh, I'm also told there's a great phone out there, but I'm not sure that even a great phone exists. I'm told there's a lot of great stuff out there, so I was not as enthused. Uh, but I just said screw it. Like I finally made the account, and I have been. It's thrilling to see it. It generates right in front of you too, quickly, but it does. It generates right in front of you, and
As
the
far as you
idea that
know, I
well,
mean,
yeah, that's
as far as you know, it might be a human on the other end, actually, just answering your questions
yeah, it could,
for
very
you.
thoughtful human. The thing is, it's generating such long form text quickly, and it can be apparently. I mean, it warns you of this. It can be wrong, and it's a very confident. This could be a big misinformation. If there is enough misinformation out there, and it's just processing language out there, then it's going to spit it out
Oh,
there.
that's
It's going to
inevitable.
spit
I
it
mean,
back. Yes,
that literally is the case. So
yes,
it's
that
not just
is the
it's not a
case.
hypothetical. That is the case with it, and
But if you ask it,
that is an unsolvable problem as far as I'm concerned.
yes, and hope, and that's where when you have the open marketplace of ideas, like the truth tends to rise to the top. At least that's what I want to believe. And so if I ask it, is 1 plus 1 2, it's gonna affirm that. Or if I even ask it, I mean, it's as trustworthy as say Wikipedia. And Wikipedia, we say as teachers don't use Wikipedia because it's not a proper scholarly source. But like we use Wikipedia and it's pretty dang trustworthy. And so when I ask when I ask ChatGPT to explain existentialism to me, and it spits back accurate information, and so yeah, I don't know, like there, but it also might pepper in some. I could see it getting complicated with like newly emerging issues where
Hmm.
people are divided on. Or like the science isn't definitive or whatever, like emerging things. I think a language processor would be a little more. I guess it's just more. In everyone, no one knows. It's not a collectively decided thing.
Well,
If I ask it,
so that's part of the danger in it. I think is that people don't understand how it works. They attribute magic to it where no magic exists. They attribute intelligence to it where no intelligence exists. I've heard people say that Chat GPT is smarter than you. Chat GPT AI is coming and it's smarter than you. Well, not really. I mean,
yeah, it's
smarter. I mean, we've talked about AI a number of times on this podcast, and you know, I don't claim to be an AI expert, but like, like I got a master's degree and I took a lot of AI courses. My degree specialized in interactive intelligence. So like, I'm not an idiot. Like I know the basics. I know how the basic
you know
algorithms
more
work.
than most. Yeah, yeah.
And like it just before those courses I had a little bit of that magic. I thought, oh wow, AI is actually intelligent. And then I took the courses and I realized, oh, it's just equations. Like it's just like it's if you think
It's
about it for any
powerful but not intelligent. Is that a
yes.
reasonable thing to say?
Yeah. If you think about it for any length of time, then it becomes obvious like, oh yeah, actually these nerds didn't create life on a computer. They you know they created very smart, very effective algorithms that can run extremely fast with the benefit of modern hardware. And so it can crunch through all the permutations and it can search large networks of connections very, very quickly. And is that impressive? Yes, it's very technically impressive, and I continue to be technically impressed by ChatGPT and all of the AI stuff that's coming out. But it's not magic to me. It doesn't feel like we're on the brink of the singularity and humans are the old and the AI is the new. Out with the old, in with
Right.
the new. We're not going to be able to tell the difference between humans and AI, and well, because there's no soul to the AI output. It's just manufactured soul. It's just soul that's reached out into all of the human produced information that's, that we've trained it on, and it pulls out the little bits and pieces, and so it tricks us into thinking there's soul there. And sometimes it does a good job. Like sometimes it does an excellent job because, it a lot of humanity's soul is expressed in language, in its words, spoken and written words. And so, we are so used to inferring other people's humanity based on what they say or what they write, that when a very sophisticated algorithm can pick words and put them in a certain order, well, I mean, it tricks us into thinking that
It
there's soul
yeah, and
there. It's the
it
same
tricks
thing.
us. Go ahead.
It's almost identical to that, that thought experiment, silly thought experiment. If you had an infinite number of monkeys typing on an infinite number of typewriters, they could eventually produce the complete works of Shakespeare, which is a thought experiment on infinity. But actually, we are with AI approaching slowly that infinite horizon where, a computer with infinitely fast processing capability and an infinitely large database to search through could eventually produce, the complete works of Shakespeare or the human soul or whatever. And, I think it's an asymptotic approach, that being we'll never get there. It's infinitely far away, and we just approach it with increasingly diminishing returns. I think that's where we are. But that's the point, is that without human produced information, without training, this thing, ChatGPT itself was trained with supervised learning, which requires human input or at least some verification that it's not aware of, reinforcement learning and things like that. And in fact, ChatGPT particularly was, it produced output, and they had their whole team, and even reputedly some outsourced Kenyan tribes people, or I guess there weren't tribes people, but just Kenyan citizens doing thumbs up or thumbs down on the outputs, and, kind of massaging them and fine tuning the model. Actually, while I'm mentioning that, I'll mention a funny tidbit that I read. I don't know the truth of this. It was on Wikipedia, so who knows whether it's true or not. But apparently, the outsourced Kenyans that they used for content moderation of ChatGPT, uh, they were being given the unfiltered, unmoderated output from ChatGPT, and they were so traumatized by the outputs that they're like, they're complaining about it, if not pursuing legal action against
Wow.
Open AI for all of the terrible things apparently that they were exposed to. I don't know
I
what to
mean,
think
because
about
it's just
that.
the filth of the internet kind of thing, lots of terrible, like whether it's racist or misogynist or gory or what. What are we
I
talking
don't know.
about?
I don't know. I didn't dig further into it. I imagine that it's exaggerated, and these are, uh, yeah, people
It
just
sounds like a
trying to make an extra buck, by complaining.
yeah,
But that is
interesting.
something I want to talk about, is the content moderation in ChatGPT, the concept of content moderation of an AI chatbot, whether that's good or bad, how that should be done or shouldn't be done, what the effects might be. I think that's an interesting area of
Oh, it
conversation.
definitely is. Well, I had several thoughts that were
Hmm.
going on when you're talking about artificial intelligence, and to me, the metaphor of like what it's trying to do is hold up a mirror, and and if you think about a mirror, I mean, a clean mirror, the reason I know it's not a mirror, well, first of all, I might see myself in it, but if it's positioned somewhere else, I might not know it's a mirror, except it has borders and it might have a smudge on it. But if it's perfectly clean and it does, uh, when I think of ChatGPT or any of this AI, or the reason it's effective is because it's digging, like the reason this art, if you've seen the AI art stuff, it
Yeah.
actually is impactful and beautiful. It's because it's building on the backs of giants. It's holding up a bunch of mirrors, and
Yes.
so I think the job of AI when it gets complex is it's holding up lots and lots of mirrors, and then it's trying to erase the seams. And so I imagine like a wonky AI holds up maybe not as many mirrors, and that they're clunkily synthesized so that like it's just very clear I'm looking at a bunch of mirrors and you can see the seams, and it looks kind of cool, but it's really distorted. But like ChatGPT is holding up more mirrors, and I guess the metaphor is like somehow the seams are a little more seamless and not as noticeable. Is that I don't know. That was just a thought
No,
I
that's
had.
a
Like,
good analogy, I think, and I can definitely see AI Dungeon that we talked about and did a little we played with on an episode before that used the GPT-2 language model. It's made by the same
yeah, and
people.
this one's three.
This one's
Okay, yeah,
GPT
yeah.
3 and really GPT 3.5 they call it. So it's kind of like a beta test of GPT 4. And what changes between these models is the number of parameters. That's the metric they use for it. GPT 3 has 175 billion from what I read, and that's
I
just
don't understand what like. What's an
yeah.
example of
It's
one
not
parameter?
it's not that important. You know, I'm not sure exactly what mechanism they're using under the hood, whether it's a neural network or whatever. But whatever the case is, it's obvious that the more parameters, you have, the more wide ranging and discriminating your algorithm can be in predicting the next word of a string of text.
Okay.
And so the more parameters, the better. Potentially, the more parameters, the longer the processing time, or I'm sure there's some other diminishing returns. The more data space that it takes up on disk. Although on that topic, one thing I was surprised to see is that GPT-3, the one that ChatGPT is using, takes about 800 gigabytes of space on disk, which just isn't that much. I expected it to be a lot more.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it makes me wonder if this is runnable offline in any way. Like I don't know if there's extra data overhead on top of the 800 gigabytes of raw data that's required. But anyway, I was curious. I searched around a little to see if there was an offline version, and there's not of this model, of course.
Well, so so yeah, from a technical perspective and all of it, it's really impressive, and I could give a bunch of examples like I did, but really I want to get to like I want to consider its impact and
Mm-hmm.
particularly with I was thinking about, of course, through the lens of being an English teacher, but also through just like the idea of language and how important language is and how we communicate through language. That's how we take what's inside of us and we communicate to the external world. We have language, and then we have different means of doing that. We can speak, we can we can speak and we can read and we can write and we can watch and we can, listen and, whatever. And I would say that in terms of language with regard to reading, it has been highly disrupted and transformed and different than it used to be. Like people say things like we're reading less, and they mean that we're not reading long form text, literature, fiction, or just you're not sitting down for hours. Like that is happening less, but perhaps I think an argument could be made we're reading more than ever. It just might be that everyone to some degree is a publisher now, right? They're posting their Facebook posts or their social media posts, or reading quick articles, or reading headlines, or reading like
Mm-hmm.
we're reading constantly. It just might be lower quality, not as curated information. I don't know, but like we're definitely reading differently than we used to. When it comes to writing, we've been writing differently as well, because text messages or the same social media posts, we're creating them. But really, we've talked about being like a copy paste generation, or that's what Facebook has become. Instead of generating, you're just copy pasting, which is interesting because that's what ChatGPT does. And my
Yeah.
concern at a high level is the idea of language, like the difference between well, let me back up just a second. One argument is like, look, it's not gonna fade away. AI generated text and its sophistication is here, and now it's just gonna grow and become more prevalent. So, English teachers, one way of thinking of it is like, well, instead of assigning, like maybe it's just a bad prompt to say write an essay on the symbolism of fire in Fahrenheit 451. Uh, and maybe we need to ask students. Maybe they do it. They get the generated ChatGPT essay, and then they become editors, and then they become they tweak the information. Maybe they embellish it. They add to it. They take away. They edit it, and on a surface level, that's like, okay, that's cool, because ultimately, isn't editing a form of synthesizing? Like,
Hmm.
okay, there are a lot of valuable skills here, and that's what we're doing, is trying to teach them to think and read the text. But the core issue is that in terms of language, is that it's someone else's. It's
Yeah.
AI, for goodness sake. It's not just someone else's, like a book we read, but it's like, to read, the difference between reading or writing and writing with ChatGPT is the difference between writing and reading. You're just like, you're taking someone else's language. But like, to really write, is to create your own language, or at least to use language for to express yourself uniquely. And if you're just using that stuff, like, I don't know, you're not creating, you're
Yeah,
not using your
absolutely.
own. So
I mean that definitely highlights the problem of AI AI generation, AI text generation, and in the classroom, right? And like, I mean, I've been saying on this podcast and off of it for years that the robots are coming to take your job, and this is just the first. This is this is the pebble in the pond here.
yeah,
It's not taking your job exactly, but it's posing major fundamental, like foundationally disrupting issues for education, because
yeah, we're just gonna, yeah.
writing
So
is a key component of education, and because like it allows for asynchronous production and review of thoughts. Essentially, that's the purpose of writing. You might argue, you might quibble with that, but practically, the purpose of writing in the classroom is so that students can all write at the same time, and then you can later review their writing. Like, it's a time thing, because the purpose of education, at least partially, is to provide them knowledge and wisdom, the ability to synthesize information and generate their critical thinking skills. Okay, all of that is great, but writing's not the only way to do that. It happens to be a convenient way because of the practical details of writing that I mentioned. So, like, if now writing, it can still be a valuable tool, but the problem is that the tempting and easy path is to use AI to take a shortcut, so you never have to develop the skills. You can let the AI do the writing for you, and so you're not actually serving the purpose of education. And so the only way, or one of the ways that teachers could get around this is, okay, well, writing isn't going to be the primary method of of transferring this knowledge, wisdom, and critical thinking skills anymore. So you would have a lot more, I imagine, a lot more extemporaneous speaking, or class discussions, or roundtables, or whatever, and it would be
yeah.
less grading of essays and papers, which kind of makes sense to me, and I think might actually be a beneficial change to education. Um, as much as I enjoy writing, I do like writing, or rather, I like having written. I like having a produced writing product, and that kind of thing wouldn't go away, because the people who learn that they enjoy, communicating, synthesizing, questioning, discussing, they would still be able to write, and people would still be able to read the stuff that they produce. It's just that the people who don't enjoy it, or who are learning to do it and find it unpleasant while they're learning, wouldn't be able to lean on an AI chatbot to do that.
Well, I think that, even if, I mean, I want to picture like high school Bennett, and I'm your teacher. I'm this inspirational teacher, and you agree with me generally when I like make an argument, and I'm talking about the dangers of Chat GPT and the power of expressing yourself and honing these skills, and you agree with me. And then you get home and you have this homework assignment that you can either just click a button, or you can laboriously,
I can already tell you.
struggle
I
through.
can already tell you what I would do. I would click the button. The AI would produce a story. I would read it, and I would think this is boring, and I would just write my own. I would think I can do better than this, and I would just write my own. Like, it's easy. It would be quicker and easier for me to write my own thing than to have the AI write it. Now, if it's depending on your assignment, if your assignment was boring and your assignment was, write me a 5 paragraph essay about the symbolism of fire in Fahrenheit 451, well, I don't find that to be a particularly interesting prompt. And if I was pressed for time and found it to be a bore, then yeah, I might click the button, read to find out what the symbolism of fire was, and then write my own essay using those nuggets of information. But even then, I would probably be disappointed, and I would just rather do it. I would rather write my own take on what the symbolism of fire is, because I just I get really weary of just boring lack of soul, and that's what it is. That's what this AI is lack of soul, and that tires me. Tires me really quickly when I read something that doesn't have a voice, doesn't have soul, doesn't bring anything unique to the table. And I imagine this is what you're exposed to every day. With students who are learning to write, is just kind of churned out. This is why you couldn't, you might not be able to tell the difference between an AI generated essay and a student generated essay, because I imagine, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that it's only 10% of student essays that have a soul, and the rest of them are just kind of churned out
Yeah,
things.
oh, definitely. I think the word voice is what comes to mind in terms of English teacher terms, like having a voice in your essay. It's like a lot of kids, and this isn't a problem really. This is actually just very, very natural, is they're learning the mechanics of writing, and we're assigning things that it's not like we're not doing a lot of creative writing. Creative writing has this unfortunate reputation of being fluff, not as rigorous, not as intellectual, not as serious. It's more of just a cutesy assignment. I've always thought, no, like we have to redefine. It's not like just write about unicorns, or just some made up like prompt where you just say whatever. Like it's actually the highest form. Like we read these creative works and we write these literary analysis. If we can get students to be creating the creative works, like they're doing the highest level thing, right? Like that is the ultimate goal, is that they can communicate thematically and in a literary form. So I get annoyed when we say, like, we really dumb it down. We write literary analysis and we say here is like how to do a topic sentence. Here's a bank of transition words, and it almost becomes this fill out a template. Here's how to do quote integration. We get caught up in MLA format and where the period goes before or after the parentheses, and it it feels like I'm talking about mechanics instead of soul. And so
Yeah, well, you have
what
to learn the
that's what
rules.
AI can, and
You
you
have to
do. You
learn
need
the
to.
rules before you can break them. So,
Yes.
I mean,
So
that far
it's
I
just something I
understand.
sort of accept, that like, yeah, like I mean I don't think I'm doing some great damage to their creativity, because
No,
that's just a dumb argument. But I
but
would
but
say
to
I
be
wish we could
honest,
be
like
developing their creativity, and kind of, who cares about them? Like remember we've talked about how we were misspelling the word hilarious, like even in high school and stuff, or like or just weird things that you would not think we were doing. We were doing. So like, what if we didn't care that you were misspelling, or that there were like some goofy weird issues with your writing, and but you
well,
were
because
really
I
wrestling with
think
big ideas and content.
well, I think it's dangerous to stray too far down that route. Now, what if we don't care about the fundamentals so much, and we only care about the ultimate goal? Well, I think that's dangerous. Like, obviously, we shouldn't tie ourselves in a knot and fail a student if they put the period outside the parentheses or inside the parentheses. That's silly. And even I think that uh, English teachers in particular can get really pedantic, especially with their formatting guides. Like, I
Yeah,
think that
yeah,
stuff gets kind of ridiculous. I hate MLA formatting and all of that. Like, just just make it easily comprehensible.
yeah.
And no, but grammar and punctuation is part of making it equally comprehensible, and spelling too. Um,
Yes,
that
yes.
and using the correct word, like actually using the
Yeah,
right
there
word.
has to be a baseline of communication that's consistent.
Yeah, all of that is important, and that's what students should be taught. Now, if I had to gripe about things, I would say that at the high school level where you are, by that point, the fundamentals. There should be no question about the fundamentals by the time students get to high school. They should you should as an 11th grade. What grades are you teaching right now? 10th
I'm
and
teaching
11th?
ninth and 10th.
Ninth and 10th.
Yeah.
I would say certainly by 11th grade, a teacher should an English teacher should never find a spelling error in their students' essays,
Oh man.
never find a
Yeah.
punctuation error in their students' essays, and never find a grammar error in their students' essays. Like, it just shouldn't exist at that point. By that point in your education, you should be so practiced in writing that you shouldn't have those errors. But our education system sucks so bad that people continue, we societally continue to just push kids forward through school even when they don't have the fundamentals. Like elementary school is when, like, by the time you reach 6th grade, you should be writing the essays that you're receiving now, in high school. Middle school is when they should have the fundamentals pretty well grasped, and they're experimenting and playing around with the rules, and that's their exploratory phase when they're poking at things, and that's when
Yeah.
you're going to get the
Yeah.
weird, exciting essays that kind of don't work or don't quite make sense, or you have things out of order. And then high school, you should be getting pretty polished, well thought out things. That's my opinion on the way that progression should go. Like, I know in the modern educational context that's absurd, and you just could never
Yeah.
expect that.
That's why I
But
was laughing. It's just, yeah, even
but
with some high achieving students, but yeah,
but
you're
that's the way it
right, I
should
think.
be. That's the way it should be, and we shouldn't settle for less. I don't think we should settle for less, and if that means holding back kids for multiple years in a row, then well,
Yeah,
that's
just make
just
it
the way
less
it goes.
taboo to get held back. Yeah, that's a whole revolutionary
Yeah, I mean,
model. But
we've just like we just need to the whole educational endeavor is a total bust right now to me. Like the like the credentials, all of that stuff is so empty and meaningless. Like you
let me
you have done a terrible job at this.
let me put us back on track. Well, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but sometimes I get tickled if I have assigned a really good prompt, or if a kid is really into their writing, and you touched on this a little bit, that they're let's say I have a student who's in terms of is a good thinker, but their writing is not the most disciplined. If I give them a boring topic and we've talked about it in class, even if we talked about it in, if we it's a good topic, but we've really basically given all the answers, all the analysis in class, and I ask them to write an essay, they can write a disciplined essay because they're not having to think too much about the content. It's just like they can focus on the organization, the structure, and all the rules. But if I assign them something, and let's say they've shown that to me, they do have the capability of producing a disciplined text. Now, then I assign them something that they get really excited about, and they are just on fire. Their brain's on fire, and they write it, and they're kind of grasping at that, I guess, zone of proximal development, like as far as they can reach. They're really wrestling with big ideas. They haven't fully sorted out. Their essay is so much more likely to be a hot mess, in terms
Sure.
of organization. I've even seen it go as much as like just one wall of text they've submitted. Now, of course, I should, and I have like handed it back and said, look, you've got some good ideas in here, but you just didn't even write in paragraph form. You just wrote one line. Like, it looks like you were so excited that you forgot everything you knew about writing and organization and structure, and we're just trying to get, which is great, but that just means this is a draft. Go back. But my point is that seems to be there's only so much capacity. We're finite beings, and we can't do it. There's almost infinite things to do with writing. I think that's the trouble with it. Like other subjects, when you're just like doing a math equation, there can be something beautiful. And I'm not saying it's not complicated, but it is just like there is a path, and it is a singular path often. But this is like you can do whatever you want, and you can create and go in different directions. It's like so when they're occupied by constructing new thoughts and they're excited by that, they seem to lose some, it's just a cost in other areas. And so sometimes I almost take it as a compliment. Like if I know a student's writing well enough and go, this writing is a disaster, but man, they're like wrestling with an idea. They're actually, I guess the thing you were saying, soul. There's something that they're actually wrestling with ideas, and I think that's a win.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I agree, and I think in the post AI generative text world, you'll just have to find a different way to get them to express that
we're just
soul and
writing
those
class,
ideas.
handwriting. We're all going back to handwriting, cursive handwriting in class.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, time becomes the issue, right? And
Yeah,
scalability, because you can't you can't ask your students to discuss the symbolism of fire in Fahrenheit 451. Everyone stand up and speak your thoughts. They can't they can't all
Yeah.
do that at the same time. Now, if you had a robot teacher, well then
Oh man.
maybe, because listen to this. Then you could have a classroom of students, each with their own microphone or whatever, or in their own little booth, or some, I don't know, some kind of technological um, solution to it. You could have the robot teacher, which could listen to 30 different audio streams at the same time, turn them into text, run them through its hover chat GPT algorithm, and then
Yeah.
assess the 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 coherency
Well,
of all of those streams of audio, and then grade them. And
oh,
so,
that's another thing you can do. I can copy paste an essay and say like give feedback on organization on this, and it will.
yeah.
So
Um, but the problem with Chat GPT in particular is that it can be wrong. So, like, yeah, you said you could, feed it an essay and ask it for feedback, but you still have to verify what it says. Like that's the problem with it right now, is that it can be wrong, and it can be quite wrong actually. And you have to imagine that in its training, in its supervised learning and reinforcement learning process, they have people doing thumbs up and thumbs down on its responses and fine tuning everything. Like, with the sheer volume of output that it can produce and the limited number of humans working on it, like, you just have to imagine that a lot slips through the cracks. And so you can't, like, it. Firstly, it has no soul. Secondly, you can't count on it to be right. All you can use it for is like a seed for your own thoughts or your own purposes. Like, and I don't think people realize that right now. They think that it's magic, that it can be
yeah, it's a
used.
substitute.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
substitute, but it's not. It's a supplement. Um, and it's tricky, right? Because the OpenAI, the people who are making it, they are not. I mean, they would be happy if people keep this magic feeling for as long as possible, because it makes them the most money and gets them the most you know reputation and popularity and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
and probably your data too. That's why I didn't play around with it, because they want your email and phone number, and I'm like, I'm not giving that to
Right.
some shady AI company that doesn't share their code. They call themselves open AI, and they're not actually open source. Like, what are they
Right.
doing?
Right. Are we training it currently too? That's what people say. Like
I
everything we're doing
think
is training it.
I think you can give, like, when it gives you a response, can't you give it a thumbs up or thumbs down and tell it why? Like, they'd probably use that stuff.
Yes, there's a thumbs up and down, and I've just not clicked on those. But yeah,
They probably use that in some form or fashion.
what I want to know is, like you said, it can be wrong. When can the way I heard it phrased, and this is just one video I watched, so this doesn't mean a lot. I sent it to you actually, but within a year, at least, the claim was that within a year it will sort of test the information against the real world, and I don't know what that means. Like right now, it's just a language algorithm, spitting out all the mirrors thing, but like, can it actually test
It depends.
its?
Yeah, I mean, I heard that too, that claim made, and it depends on what we're talking about.
I guess
Someone.
the way I interpreted it was like it will test to see if it's accurate, like in reality. Like
How?
is this statistic real? Yeah, I don't know. Then we get into the trouble of like going to verified sources or
Right.
like
I
ones
mean, it's
that
the
are
same
considered
problem.
right.
Like, this is the issue, right? Is that all the problems inherent in human knowledge and communication that we have had on the internet are now still present. Every single one of those problems is still present with ChatGPT, except now it's obscured. It's hidden underneath their algorithm and all of the neural network back propagation error nonsense under the hood, and the company that doesn't expose how it works or cite its sources or anything. It's all hidden. So all the misinformation or incorrect information or bias or uh, faulty data, error bars, all of that stuff that we have already still is present with ChatGPT or a future AI. It's just now obscured from us, and we can't see that those problems exist. That's the magic, right? We would love. So I bet there are people who get a response from ChatGPT, and they love it. They would love if it's true, but it's not true. It's a mirror. Like you said, it's a mirror, and they are just either unwilling or unable to see the seams that are present in the
Yeah,
results that they're
yeah.
getting.
It What is the field, like the theory of knowledge, epistemology, is that the
Yeah.
word? The
Yep.
study of like and how knowable is the truth and all of this. I mean, to me, this seems like one of the most if you were a philosopher or like this seems like one of the more interesting question of our times is epistemological crisis we're in of like I guess what's interesting to me is growing up, I thought the truth was so absolutely knowable, and not only, well, I still believe the truth is knowable. I just thought it was reasonably easy to know,
Yeah.
and I think it is. In this, the smaller you get, like in my world, meaning like my job and my like there's just knowable things, how much my rent is, what day of the week it is, what my schedule looks like, these, and I think we need things to be very knowable. And
Hmm.
so I guess this is a new idea I'm literally coming upon right now as I'm talking out loud, but like that's the tension now, is like as we've become more universally
Yeah.
connected, that like what's knowable is so obscured, and dang, that is unsettling. And so then there are people who are unhappy with their lives who decide to sort of emphasize, you know
Well, that's a
bigger
great.
picture stuff, and they just don't even know what's what. Like
It's
it's
a
just
great point, and yeah, I want to talk out loud about that a little bit too. So you can imagine in the pre-internet era, before we had this explosion of connectivity,
which was
and
us, by the way. Pre-internet is us.
I know,
Gosh.
right? Well, I mean, we had a taste of it. We were
Yeah.
still pretty young at that time, but before that, people's experience was mostly things that they participated in themselves personally, and they experienced the ups and downs. They took an action and witnessed the consequences, and then over time formed lessons and beliefs and understanding of how the world worked. And so, yeah, obviously people had newspapers and radio and TV, and they could, read literature and all of that. But the knowledge was the big picture ideas was uh, it was polished, right? It was polished, and it was composed before they consumed it in almost every case. And then their own personal experience was generated, firsthand, through trial and error. And so all of that to say that pre-internet, I feel like people had a very solid
Consistency,
and
maybe.
yeah, a solid and confident idea in how the world works and what they believe and why, because they were there for it all. But post-internet, we were hit with a tidal wave of knowledge, opinions, and importantly, it was uncomposed knowledge and opinions. Especially now, it seems like things are getting less and less composed as we go further in time with social media and just hundreds or
Yeah.
thousands of talking heads and diverging blogs and news posts and everything.
Yeah.
And no single person has the time to verify it all, and no person has the life experience generally to say, oh, this fits with what I've seen before. And in fact, now we live online so much that our experience, the mechanism that we use for testing whether something is true or fits with our beliefs or principles or observations, like the internet has now corrupted that tool. Like now things that we read on the internet or opinions from people that we heard on the internet, we use that to check and verify the things that we experience in real life. It's almost like it's been inverted, right? Like
Right.
you out and you see something and you say, "Wait a second, I heard about this on Twitter or whatever." and you're checking to see if the thing you experienced actually fits with what you heard about on the internet. And that's wrong, right? Like all the stuff on the internet, you should be looking at with a little asterisk next to and saying this is suspect information. And the stuff you experience in the real world, that's what you should be comparing all the internet stuff to. But we don't do that. And you and I, like you said, we are kind of like the people straddling the pre-internet and post-internet era. Like when did you start using the internet really? Probably middle schoolish.
I think the
I mean,
beginnings of AOL Instant Messenger
yeah,
was sixth, seventh grade.
right. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
my experience too. And that was early days, and obviously we weren't being exposed to the vast amount of information that we have now. The internet was a different place. Um, but now there are
right.
uh,
That was just a different thing entirely. We were looking at just like funny, like this is the beginning of spam emails that were still fresh, reading hilarious jokes,
well, I mean,
and
I
this was
remember, going over to one of our mutual friends, Casey's house. This was elementary school, and he had the internet, and I didn't yet have the internet, and he had a
it's
computer.
a funny way to put it. He had the internet.
Right. Well, that is a funny way to put it. And we sat down in front of the computer, and he was like, "Oh, I have the internet. What do you want to look up?" And I was just a kid, and I was thinking, "Oh, what do I like? Pizza. Let's go to pizza.com or Pizza Hut. Type in Pizza Hut or something." And like, we just went to like the Pizza Hut website and looked at the pizza on there, and I was like, "Whoa, this is cool."
Yeah, yeah. The idea of that being exciting
Whereas
just
like
shows how different.
today a similar Bennett in fourth or fifth grade or whatever, being exposed to the internet would say, "Oh, what do I like? Pizza. Type in pizza," and I would get a YouTuber who tries all the pizzas in the world, or
Yeah,
like. Oh, can you make a pizza with peanut butter? Will it pizza? All of this
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Like I would get all of that, and you could make an argument that that's good. It's obviously entertaining, and there's tons of knowledge and information there. But it also like maybe I didn't pick the right example for this, but it could
Yeah,
it
seems
could
better,
it
but
could mess with your idea of pizza. Like, if you're a kid and you've never been exposed to that stuff, and you've eaten, the pizza, you go out with your family to a pizza place, or you order pizza or whatever, and you have this experience of pizza, but then all you see is this wild, flashy stuff about pizza. It
yeah.
does something to your idea of pizza. Do you
Not
think?
even your idea of pizza. Get this, it's your idea of you. So you think you like pizza. It's your favorite food, and in your family, you're Pizza Bennett. Like,
Yeah,
and you
sure.
like it. You wear that with a badge of pride, and you look it up, and you see the history of pizza, and then you didn't even know there was deep dish and Chicago style and
Right.
Italian da 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 and all this, and you get overwhelmed, and you go, I don't.
Maybe I'm
I'm
not a
not
pizza
worthy. I'm
Bennett.
not kind of
Yeah.
like participating in all this.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe I'm just lame. I don't really like. And
These
so like
other
yeah, it's
people are
not
making like peanut butter pizza and whipped cream pizza and
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
cauliflower freaking pizza, pineapple on pizza, things that should never exist, right? They're doing all of
Yeah.
this stuff, and you're sitting here thinking, wow, like
I
maybe
liked my personal pan pizza
I
from
thought
Pizza
I
Hut.
liked
I
pizza,
just
but
thought
I
that.
guess I don't. I'm just whatever. But then like also think Pizza Bennett is growing up and hanging out with his friends in pizza parlors and things that kids do. But over time, my conceptualization of what pizza is has now been influenced by all of this internet knowledge that I didn't investigate. Right, I didn't watch the video of peanut butter pizza. Like, I didn't watch that video. There's so much pizza
You didn't
content on
have
the
time.
internet.
You just
Look,
glanced at
I,
it.
I bet
Yeah.
there's so much content about pizza on the internet that no single person could consume it all before dying. Like it's impossible, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
my conceptualization of what pizza is now maybe it's 60% my personal experience with pizza, but it's also 40% pizza nonsense on the internet. And I think for kids today, like that percentage is increasingly shifting towards all of their experience and knowledge is based on stuff that came from the internet and less about what they've personally experienced. And obviously, we're using the silly example of pizza, but this also applies to things like, uh, you know, friendships or dating or family interactions or career aspirations or social issues or values and beliefs, the way you understand and interact in the world, major things that are very important for people to hammer out on their own and come like you're generating your character, your personality, and your soul. Like you're creating your soul by doing that stuff yourself. And when instead you're outsourcing it all to the internet, and it's not simply like, I'm not saying that the internet is necessarily bad. I'm just saying that all of that stuff
Not
that you're
you.
bringing in,
Yeah.
you're not verifying it. Like you're not testing that for real. You're just accepting that it's true or accepting that it's valid, and it is passively corrupting your identity, the who you are passively, and you can't help it. Like that's why it's so
Yeah.
important to do stuff yourself. And that's why, just going back to Chat GPT, I'm technically impressed. I wouldn't, if I could snap my fingers and make it disappear, I wouldn't do that. I think it's really cool and interesting. But I think that people need to understand that it's a tool, and it's a tool that doesn't have soul. It doesn't represent truth. It's something that we can use, but if we're not careful, it will passively corrupt how we write and how we think and how we verify information. And I think to combat this, it's the duty of OpenAI and the other people making similar things to create it in a way that is transparent. Like you can't like they do content
Yeah.
moderation and all of that kind of stuff, and that is, they may think they're doing the right thing by hiding responses and molding what comes out of the AI, but I think they're doing a disservice by doing that because they're tricking people into thinking that they're getting truth. They're getting something real when they're really not. It should be blatantly obvious when people use a tool like this that they're getting something generated by an AI, and they can't take it, as fact. They have to be skeptical of it and use it. They have to take the information that they receive from ChatGPT and filter it through their own experience and then produce the real human product. They can't just take it and copy paste it from ChatGPT. Same thing with AI generated art. Like, yeah, you can click the button and make uh, I don't know the names of the image processing AIs, deep
I don't know either.
whatever. But you can press the button and yeah, it can generate some art, and maybe it looks really cool. But if you are a true artist, you're not just going to take that, put it on a canvas, and sell it. You're going to say, "Oh, this makes me think of, you know, this idea," or "Oh, this elicits this emotion," or whatever the heck artists do. And they're going to put some additional splatters on there and then put it on canvas and sell it. And that's different. That's the way to actually utilize AI as a tool.
I it just it bums me out hearing the idea of like identities being formed by like the internet. But I also think, I guess this is where you seem to, and I agree with you, cherish the lived experience, like the in real life experience, as being the accurate one. And the I was just trying to think of a counter to that, like to play devil's advocate and say I don't know that I have one, but
I mean, the
let's think of it.
counter the counter is to say that the internet is the combined lived experience. I hate that term. It's the combined lived experience of so many people. There's so much knowledge and information there, and you're putting your head in the sand by not taking advantage of it. There's so much that you could learn and expand. You could expand yourself and your horizons and all of that by participating in this community of
Yeah, think of the
people.
rural person and the urban person and how their conceptualizations of the world would be wildly different, especially without the internet. And like, but it's not a problem because how you operate in your world is what matters, I guess. And like the rural person,
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why, like, I'm gonna stop
yeah,
playing devil's
full stop
advocate
there.
for a moment. But like, how you operate in your world is what matters. If your world is the real world, well, then if you operate well in that world, then great. But if how you operate in the world, if most of your world is on the internet is quicksand. The internet is
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, infinite, and nothing that you do is going to have any significant effect on it. People don't care about your participation in the internet. You're just a dust mote in the web of information. And so, like, you can be totally unhinged, wild, like, you have no barriers. The consequences of your actions almost don't exist. And no matter what you do on the internet, it's going to have almost no effect on the internet. That is a totally different experience to your real world. If you're wildly unhinged in your real life, if you go into the grocery store and you rip off your pants and start screaming and you're knocking cereal boxes over and you're throwing soup cans everywhere, and then all of that stuff,
Not the soup cans.
even the soup cans, like you're gonna feel some effects from that, I suspect. But on the internet, that's not the case, and so like your ability to actually test action and reaction and consequence is lessened on the internet. And so like you actually build, I think you actually build less character by living more of an online life than you would if you didn't. Like, and so I think, I've said this theme has probably come up in our conversations a lot before, but like I think we are infants when it comes to the use of the internet. Like we don't know how to use it yet societally. Like we just
Yeah.
don't understand it yet. In the same way that like when the TV came about, people would just veg out on their couch, and there were lots of people talking about doomsday with TVs. And I feel like we've learned how to use TVs better. Maybe we're still not to a full level of maturity. It's been complicated by other technology, but with the internet, we are truly just babies. And the same thing with, maybe you could even go back further into history and say gunpowder or firearms. Like when those came about, people got the power went to their heads and they conquered other countries and went wild with it. And it took
Yeah.
until that technology spread over all of civilization, essentially, until now. Like now we have a pretty good idea how to use firearms. Like you don't just have people starting up their own little militias and taking over places, generally speaking. I mean, obviously this is not a perfect analogy. You could argue a lot about firearm usage, but in general, it seems like we've matured. Humanity has matured enough to at least understand how that technology works. Whereas the
Right. And
internet,
exist in society without constant chaos anyway. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like the internet, we have certainly not gotten there. We don't know the effects of the internet on humanity, and like, yeah, people can't psychologically interact with the internet, broadly speaking, and come out unharmed by it. Like some people can, but many people can't, and that's dangerous. Like we because of the pace of technology and innovation, all of which I quite like, and think is positive. Like we pushed forward and we just continue to push forward, and people are always pushing the boundary, but people, not everyone has caught up. Like, people haven't learned how to use this appropriately, and so like I think that it's just it's just important that we not only produce the products, but teach people how to use the products appropriately. And I don't think we have really done that very well
Do you
with a
think
lot of technology.
the internet is so profound, so ever present, so pervasive in our lives that even though you have, lots of psychologists warning, but even that is just like a small cry and this giant,
It's the easy
like, will
path.
we will
It's the
will
easy
we
path,
even
man. It's just
will
people
we
taking
even
the easy
know
path.
though the impact? It's like, okay, we're like, here's a new world is basically what was handed to us, and we just like it's
Yeah.
just hard to even measure its impact. It's just so deeply ever present in everyone's lives. It's just like, okay, well, and so asking, well, it's just tough to ask someone who's like, a teenager to make just
Well,
making good
so
decisions and being thoughtful about it. I don't know.
well,
Like
that's
they hear
why.
it and like I do the right thing. They're like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. It's just sort of a
Right.
like I
Well,
don't
as a
know how much they're
teenager,
getting.
a teenager doesn't have the life experience to be able to put their internet experience up against their real life experience and detect the the
The
difference, right?
difference. Yeah, they
Like
don't know the difference.
they
It's
don't know
wild.
that they don't know the difference yet, and that's why, like, I guess this is controversial, or maybe this is just me being an old man, but it's incumbent upon parents to not let their kids just live all their life on the internet and have that percentage be, too out of whack. Like, exposure is okay, but you should instill in your kids that the internet is a tool and that the real world exists outside of the internet, and that's what you use to build your character. And then you can take that character and be resilient enough to participate on the internet without getting psychologically damaged or overwhelmed. Um, that's that's how it should work. And luckily for you and I, who grew up straddling the internet, we were forced into that pattern, right? Because we had
Right.
dial up, the internet wasn't developed enough. We didn't have pizza YouTubes and pizza crap on the internet. We just had the Pizza Hut. We just had the Pizza Hut website, and that got old pretty quick, right? I looked at it for like 3 minutes and went, pizza's great. Let's go play. And that's good
Yeah.
because that meant that I didn't get sucked into all of this fake, unverifiable internet world, and I got to develop my character outside of that. So we were forced into that, and that same sort of pattern is what parents should be now artificially enforcing on their kids. It's not forced by reality; they have to actually exert some discipline, and make their kids actually learn how to responsibly use the internet. I don't think parents realize how dangerous the internet potentially is. I'm not saying that the internet, like every kid exposed to the internet is, doomed. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the internet is uh, it's potentially,
Force.
yeah, it's potentially dangerous and psychologically influencing. And obviously, different component. The internet is a broad umbrella term. Different components are more or
I
less
know.
psychologically
I was thinking about that. We're
potentially
using
damaging.
it to say like anything online, which is just everything. Gosh,
Right.
I yeah.
Um,
So well, I've thought about how we're inundated with information, and now we have ChatGPT, which can produce like articles on command if you're a company just wanting to churn out stuff.
mhm.
And so, gosh, we're just going to be more inundated.
Right.
But are
Well,
we are we not already saturated?
I think we're already there. I was thinking about that too. Like the internet already there. Just think about a narrow thing. Like let me think about an area that I'm a big fan of, which is sports. Um, I'm sure that there are millions of sports articles written all the time, and sports is something that's so fleeting, right? Because, what McGregor's rush yardage, that's something that's ever changing, and after one season, no one cares about McGregor's rush yardage anymore,
Yeah,
like,
only in
and
a trivia sense. Yeah, a trivial sense.
and so the new articles have way way more importance than old articles. Like a week old article is significantly diminished in importance, and so these sports websites or bloggers or news outlets or whatever, they have huge incentive to always be publishing new stuff. And so now it takes a person to write that stuff, so you have to get an intern or some low level junior writer or whatever to put together some little article on McGregor's capability on offense in the last season or whatnot, and that takes time and money. But if you could just have an AI bot churn out an article, like if you could just feed it the GPT-3
Stats.
and some
Yeah.
stats, and you could just have automatically generated articles about McGregor and Whitkins and whoever popular, sports players, stickball field players are out there. Like, you don't, you could produce so many more articles.
Yeah, one person could just plug in all the data, give a few choice adjectives to describe the player that would feed, the machine, and then
Yeah.
there you go. They
Well,
could
all right,
crank out 40 articles.
but this all right, this gets us into another interesting area though, which is like you say, we're already saturated, and so what what happens is that all the people still have a desire to consume sports information, and so they go on the internet and they search, And what they get back is the largest sports networks, blogs, pages, websites, whatever. That's what they get back because that's what the most people have gravitated towards. And they're not going to go to the one that has no readership or viewership or whatever. And so what I think happens is that you get these mega, agglomerations of material, and everyone just kind of goes to that because that's what shows up top at their search results, and that's where people can kind of be manipulated. And over time, like I think the shotgun approach of just having an AI bot churn out articles, that's not going to be successful because like you say, people are at saturation, so they're going to go to the area where they perceive the highest quality, um, and and actually get what they're looking for. But I was
I can
also
actually
thinking too, like, why would a small website that churns out AI produced articles stay in business because of advertising? We could end up in a place where people are using AI bots to generate ad material and insert ad material into their AI generated articles, and then people because people don't want to watch ads or deal with advertising, they have their own AI bots that automatically watch the ads for them so that they don't have to. And so we could end up in a place where the internet is produced and consumed by AI bots.
the same way a kid writes a ChatGPT paper and I have a ChatGPT grader,
Greater.
grade
Yeah.
it. it's oh,
Right.
Or what if you didn't go to a website anymore? You just went to the, like, since you kind of acknowledged if it was common knowledge that these are just being chat or generated anyway, you would just Google your player and like last night's game. Not Google. You. I used the word Google, but I meant like type it into a chat bot or an AI bot, and it would just give. And it kind of learned me. It like knew who Daniel was, and I like a little bit of silliness and like a joke every now and then, and it would just give me really well like curated information about their stats and made me feel good,
That's
but made me
the
just angry enough to come back because anger is a big deal too.
that's the good future. Like, it's easy to envision all of the ways this can be harmful and dangerous, but if we tried to envision a mature, appropriate future for this sort of technology, I think that's where it goes. It's not some Silicon Valley non-transparent kind of shady company developing this AI model that it's then harvesting your data to use. It's everyone having their own personal AI that they get to mold as they wish, and they can see all of the data under the hood and how it's working. Maybe they don't understand it, just how you can take the back panel off of your TV and look at the circuitry and everything. Like, you can
Yeah.
see what's going, you can see the inputs and outputs to your own personal AI, but you can customize it as you want. And the AI, if everyone has an AI constructed in such a manner, then the AI can reach out to the internet and communicate with the internet and understand, the error bars of the information that it's receiving, and then communicate that to you. And it can say, Master, Master Bennett, this is the information my AI would always address me as Master Bennett. This is the information I found, and it has, I calculate that it has a 35% chance of being reliable or whatever, and I would have that information. Like, it would just be so great. And yeah, obviously it could do it in a way that I find pleasing, a little bit silly, and it could present me with the interesting thing that it found today, or the stats about Whitkinson and how many dunk touchdowns he had or whatever.
But it's so odd to think then now we're not going to spaces that we find comfort in. Like, people like to go to the blogger that they like, but now like you would just get the information and in a pleasant way. I guess you would be just as
Well,
fulfilled.
no, that's good. It's a good thing. It puts you back in the real world. You're not logging on to some nebulous, amorphous online quicksand where there's so much information you can never verify it. Now it's as if you were in the real world again, and you happen to go to the local pizza parlor, and there's Fred sitting at the table, and you're like, Fred, did you catch the game last night? Oh yeah, Whitkinson made a dunk pass that was just phenomenal. And then you get the information from Fred. Well, now you're in the real world again, and you can ask your personal AI and essentially receive that information in a similar way. And we can talk about the dystopian nature of AI substituting for humans and fooling ourselves that those interactions are genuine, all of that kind of thing. But no doubt to me, that's a better future than having this mega spread of information that no one can verify on the internet, and it's so impersonal how you interact with it.
So now let's say that like I'm a sport like if Alex and I are sports fans and I got my AI generated article about last night's game especially curated for me and kind of knew what stats were intriguing to me but gave me accurate stuff and he got his and we were talking about the game. Now we're not just talking about the same article that so often happens, right? People are like, oh yeah, I saw that on ESPN this or that. So now he's like, can you share that article with me that was AI generated for you and your personality? And I'm like, sure. And I like send it to him and he reads it and he likes it. And he also thinks, I like this cool information and I like Daniel because like because my personality weirdly
Influences your
is,
AI
well, that's the
output.
question. Yeah, the AI output will like have some, since it's learning me, my a mirror, I should be very importantly, but a mirror of my personality is interlaced into those articles, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, yeah, it would be because I like the stuff and it's learning what I like. I don't know, but this whole mirror relationship is odd. It's gonna keep giving me just. I think the echo chamber could really get bad there too. So I don't know. I mean, sports that's sort of harmless, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, well, echo chambers are only dangerous if you make that your real world. Like if you think of it as a tool, as a supplement to the real world, then it's not as dangerous because you're never taking that what the AI says as truth. You're taking it as, oh, you think this is the way it is? Huh, let me see if that's the way it is. And that's a better way to live than just taking it as absolute truth and then lining your real life up against it and saying, wait a second, is my life real? Like, is what I'm experiencing real? Because on the internet, it's not that way. Like, I mean, I feel like we have the most, the social issues that rise to your mind first when you think about such social issues. That's the problem we have, is that people hear about all this nonsense on the internet and they say, wait a second, my life is like that, surely, when really it's not. Um, People are taking cues from social crap on the internet and they're saying, wait a second, I experience racism, or I experience what, take your pick of negative thing. Wait, that's in my life. No, it's probably not.
Yeah.
It's just crap you hear on the internet. and
Right.
and, and
Right.
their incentives are perverse too, because the internet is quicksand, and because there's so much information, and because there's a recency bias. Like, you the incentive is to make your story or your post or your whatever as sensational as possible to get the most attention, because otherwise it'll die and no one will pay attention to it, and it'll just go into the memory hole of the internet. And so the incentives are perverse. It's that you're incentivized to be wild and crazy, and that means that when people start believing the internet is the real world, they believe that the real world is wild and crazy when it's really not. Your life is probably pretty boring and normal.
Yeah. Uh, it's draining to wrap my head around this. Uh, I don't know. It doesn't make me feel good.
Well, that's why, well, I think that's an appropriate psychological response, one that I've also had. And over the course of time using the internet, like using Facebook or whatever, like I felt the same thing. I felt like, wait, this doesn't feel good. Like, it's not actually bringing me positive things in life. The negatives are outweighing the positives. This tool is not serving me in the right way. It's making my ability to test against real life weird. Like, I'm just feeling weirdness, so I'm not going to use this tool anymore, and thus I don't use social media anymore. And wow, life is way better. Like, the benefit from that stuff is just not useful. And like, even the way I consume YouTube videos and stuff, like, I don't always have it on. Like, when I want to watch a YouTube video, it's very conscious. I think, oh, I want to watch this channel and this person, and so I turn it on and I watch it, and then when I'm done watching it, I turn it off. Like I use it as a tool consciously. I don't just say, "Oh, I don't know what to do," and turn it on and then click on crap. And I feel like a lot of people do that sort of thing.
Yeah, most people do that, I think.
And so like far be it for me to claim that I'm mature about it, but I feel like I have developed a way to use the internet that works for me and doesn't pollute my life and my soul and my humanity. Like I feel like I am still 80% or more Bennett and only a smaller percentage of internet, you know?
Right. Like, that's the sweet spot. Be 80% yourself, as they say.
As they say,
Just be
just
your
be
80,
just be your 80% of yourself.
Well,
How's the rest of life going?
I don't know. Teaching is fun.
Uh,
Stuff
you
like,
enjoying all of your life transitions?
yeah, I have felt slightly like, if you think about it, like, we exist in life in a series of roles, and like now that I'm like, my primary roles are like
Rock and
son.
roll, yeah.
I'm a son. I'm a teacher. I'm a husband. This is not in a particular order. I'm a friend. Those would be I guess the primary roles off the top of my head.
A poet.
And so a poet, a thinker, and a feeler,
Even if you don't
an
know it.
earth shaker. And so, during times of transition, those roles, usually that means like you're taking on a new role. Like I'm a teacher at a new place.
Yeah.
I'm a new husband, and so I've been spending a lot of time in roles, and then the question is, and I think this might be just a bad question, but like a kind of a who, like there's a stress associated with new roles, and stress isn't bad. It just means that it's new, and you're having to devote a lot of time thinking and like energy toward that to get growing comfortable with those roles.
Right.
And so, when am I just Daniel, like absent of the roles? And that's what I think might be a bad question, or like,
Yeah, I think
because
it
I don't.
probably is a
It's not
better
like
question.
I'm not myself when I'm, being a husband. Like I like whatever that means. It's so so it's probably just a bad question.
I
But
think it is a bad question. I mean, role, what is a role? It's a set of responsibilities that you have in relation to some concept or whatever, like your teacher role. What
yeah,
is that? It's a set of responsibilities to your employers and your colleagues and your students and
yeah,
how you interact with those responsibilities. And so, are you not Daniel when you're in that role? No, you're Daniel interacting with those responsibilities in a particular way. Same thing with the other roles that you mentioned, I think.
right,
And so,
right,
it's not that you're not Daniel. It's just that you're devoting Daniel to balancing all of those different responsibilities at the same time. And so doing that kind of does alter who you are in a way, or you may have to suppress certain urges or desires or wants or needs or whatever, and prioritize others while you're navigating the roles.
yeah. I think so. When people say things like "Who am I?" when I'm not in these roles, they're really just saying, "I'm tired. The
I'm
responsibilities
tired.
fatigue me."
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I'm
that's all
tired.
that really is.
I think
And
so too.
so, um, you know, that's all I guess I'm saying is I'm a little bit tired. So, but
Yeah,
it's
that's not surprising. I imagine, given all the changes that you took on pretty rapidly, that would be pretty tiring. And you
it's
like,
action oriented. I'm usually like to think a lot, but I haven't had as much room for thought. It's just action, go go go. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
um, I don't know, wasn't that important.
Oh, yeah. Well, so that's me. I'm tired a little bit. What? How are you?
I'm good. I'm all right.
I feel like we're doing this reverse, like where we launched into the
We
topic and now we're
did.
just sort of going here.
Oh yeah, I had an opener. I had an opener that I wanted to just a
Let's do
little.
a closer then. Make it a closer.
I'm not gonna do the the regular segment thing, but I just had a little anecdote that I wanted to mention to you because I thought it was weird. So I went to the grocery store the other day, and I was on the way back home from the grocery store, and I take this path from the grocery store behind like a Target. It's kind of like a strip mall area, and so there's this little back road that goes behind that stuff, lets you avoid the parking lots, and then it's a quicker way back to where I live. So I was going down this little back road, behind Target. There's like a dumpster, and they put their cardboard back there. You can envision they have like their garage loading garages. You can envision kind of what I'm this area. Well, there was this person pulled over kind of in this little truck loading area in his car or truck. I don't remember what kind of vehicle it was. It was an old man, and he had his driver's side door open, and he was standing outside of his truck, and he was kind of like, he looked somewhat distressed, just a little bit. He was kind of like fiddling with his phone and then looking up at the cars as they passed him slowly. There's speed bumps in this area, so you're driving really slowly. And like two cars in front of me, he like raised his finger, as if to get their attention, and like almost as if to say, "Hey, excuse me," but for either they didn't see him or they looked at him and thought he was a weirdo and didn't stop, and so they kept going. And then the car in front of me, he made the same. He was like looking down at his phone, then looked up and waved at him again, and they kind of slowed down and then kept going.
Like unsure, like should
unsure what to do. Like, and so now it's my turn, and I'm coming up to him, and he does the same thing to me, and it's just he doesn't. This doesn't look like a bad guy. This isn't like a
threatening situation.
This is not a threatening situation.
Man who's like on the he doesn't understand the GPS took him to the backside of Target or something.
Something like that. And so so I pulled over, and I stopped, and I let down my window, and I said, like, "Can I help you? Like, do you need something?" He was like, "Oh yeah, I got a question to ask you, young man," or whatever. And I was like, "All right, well." Let me pull out of the way so I'm not blocking traffic. So I pull over, and he like comes over to the driver's side window, and like he holds his phone out to me, and he's like, and it's in like selfie camera mode, and and he's like, this guy is like in his 70s or something. He's got white hair, and like he's just an old man. He's like, I somehow got the camera thing, and I didn't even wait. I didn't even wait for him. I was like, here, hand me that. See this button with the little camera and the two arrows? And you press this button, now it's in the forward-facing camera. He's like, and he looked really confused about it, and he was like, oh, all right, yeah, these darn things, doodads, like I just, you can't rub the button, but thanks, I just needed to. And then he walked over and took a picture of a big snow pile, and I was like, all right, well, I guess that's what he wanted to do, take a picture of the big pile of snow.
And he thought it was worth like flagging cars down to help him with.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Well, it was just
wow. That's the most interesting. Like if he had been lost or asked directions, was what I was certain was going to happen, or but it's just the most fascinating thing is that he thought it was worth flagging someone down. Like
I didn't. I mean,
no.
I didn't
Not
mind.
That you minded. I'm just saying.
I thought that was not. I mean, I don't know.
It's
that
nice.
just seems.
It's cute. It's weird. The whole thing's weird.
That's how the world should be. Like you should be able to just raise your finger up and go, hey, excuse me, total stranger, can you help me with this really quickly? Like I feel like if you weren't a 70-year-old man, you would have, if you would have gone straight to your phone anyway for the answer, and you would have, Googled or asked your chatbot, how do I swap from the selfie camera, and done it that way. But instead, we had an interaction, and it became an anecdote that I could relay on the podcast to a bunch of faceless listeners that we don't actually interact with.
Maybe I'm cynical to think that he, to flag a car down has a sort of weight to it. Like, I have a need, and I do not consider...
He did have a need. He had to take a picture of this snow pile.
He had to. It was a need. Because, if you're lost, there's a need to be found or find yourself. But, if you really have your camera backwards, I think most people, even, old people would just say, well, I guess I don't get to take this picture. I really should learn this better next time.
I should have, gotten out and said, "Okay, I can help fix this for you. Come over here with me." Stood in front of the snow pile, and then hold up his phone and take a selfie with him in front of the snow pile, and said, That's how you use a phone,
Yeah, that's how you use a phone.
old man. It's all for
Okay, this.
selfies. You don't need the forward-facing camera. The whole point of a phone is for the selfies.
Oh man. Okay, so listen,
I
I was
didn't
in
even
Aus-
have I didn't even have my groceries in paper bags, and that still happened to
No,
me.
it's still
So
something interesting
imagine
happening.
if I had gotten my groceries in paper bags and walked home, how much more interesting the situation would have been.
Wow. This one more old man interaction I had yesterday that is so imagine this, it's Costco and it is horrendously crowded on a Saturday. I
Yeah.
mean it is Danielle was laughing at me about like I'm navigating the cart and like you're having to be people are pretty much idiots just like driving in a crowded place too, you know, you're just getting
Sure.
frustrated all the time, people are walking too slow, this that and the other, but for the most part, given that it is, I mean, I would guess almost max capacity. Just I
Like a
need to
hundred
know who's
people.
behind me. I'm actually yeah. You know Costco's they're huge warehouse whatever like I mean and they make the aisles extra wide to get like but it is so an old man has decided in one at the end of one of the aisles at a cross section kind of thing he is uh pulled his shopping cart like he's taking up the no one can get by he's taking a phone call and I'm kind of coming up behind him. Danielle's able to slip through it. My cart's just not going to without bumping him. And so I say, "Pardon me,
Pardon
pardon
me.
me."
Pardon
I
me.
did actually go, "Pardon me, man, pardon me, pardon me," and I said it loud. By the third time, I said it loud, and so I just ease my shopping cart, and it bumps him a little bit, and he turns around and gives me the most offended look, and I'm like, "Is excuse me, buddy," and I just keep going, and it was such a gentle bump.
Yeah.
So I guess that could be like an "Am I the a-hole" sort of post. And Danielle
Right.
and I have
Sure.
talked. She goes because she goes, "Oh, that was so awkward," but like he was unbelievable. You were saying, "Pardon me." There was nothing. I mean, she goes, "I probably we had a long conversation about how maybe I could have tapped him on the
That's
shoulder, but that
funny.
makes me more uncomfortable." Like she
No.
said, but she was definitely on the side of like he's the crazy one in this situation, and I just had like what I tried 3 times to acknowledge him before
Yeah,
like
he's the a hole.
just had I had to make my way through,
Dude,
but
there's
I
nothing
still
wrong.
felt a weird adrenaline of like I just like bumped an old man to get out of the way, you know. But
There's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can't just be standing in the middle of an aisle with your cart and stuff. Like,
his location was absurd, and then we were like maybe he's hard of hearing, maybe he was getting a phone call about his wife dying of cancer. I don't know. All that's true, but you still get bumped.
none
Like you
of
still
that
get
matter.
bumped.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Let's say he was hard of hearing and his wife just died of cancer and he got the call. Like, you're
Like
still
I'm
standing in the
sorry, you're
middle of
still
the
getting
aisle.
bumped. Like isn't that mean to say? But it's still you're
No,
still in the
no,
aisle, and the
no,
world
no.
still
There's nothing
exists.
mean about being bumped. Like, that's like being bumped is the cause and effect of standing in the middle of the aisle. It's not
Yes.
mean. You didn't ram into him. You didn't say, "Ha, look at this." It's not like, like people standing in the wrong place on the road, and so you drive in the puddle to splash them. Like, it's
Right.
not like that. You
Oh,
just
yeah.
This was the minimal action you needed to actually get by.
Man, but I was thinking this how he probably interpreted that moment of like young people these days. He probably like has some. I'm projecting here, but if he has a worldview about like, and it was a chaotic place, and he probably maybe he told his story to someone about
To his
man, this
wife
guy
right
just
before
bumped
she
me, and
died. That was like his last thing. She was telling him like, "Oh, Frank, I love you so. Oh, you won't believe this, Ethel. This young whippersnapper just bumped his cart into me in the Costco.
kids these days, these hooligans. Yeah,
Frank, that sounds really annoying." Beep.
yeah, that's probably what happened. But I was just thinking about how the world gives us feedback, and he had gotten some feedback, right? He was inappropriate, and the world bumped up against him and
Right.
like, said, "Hey, like, here's a reminder." Because if he'd have self-assessed and gone, "Oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of the road, my bad," like, but instead it was maybe fulfilling his own, biases or whatever. And because I mean, I was thinking, am I doing the same by going, "Ugh, old people unaware or whatever?" And I don't really have an anti-old people thing, so I don't think
It could have been
so. I just think
anyone. I mean, it didn't
yeah,
have
it
to
could have
be
been
an old
anyone. I
man.
said excuse me several times, or pardon me. I actually said pardon me, which I think is funny.
I think that's
But I
funny
don't know
too.
why that's what came out of my. but that is what I said. Is pardon me, pardon me.
You're
I mean,
just
I don't know. Trying to be extra
sophisticated.
polite.
You're
I
just a
don't know.
sophisticated English teacher
It's just
in
I
a
was just trying to be as
metropolis, urban
gentle as
metropolis.
I knew how. Like,
Pardon
It's
me,
almost you have
fellow
to say it with a
sir.
little bit of an accent. You have to.
Yeah.
Pardon me, pardon me. But yeah, and so, but it still made me feel. Well, it was important for me to say like I'm not the jerk here. I don't regret it, and I stand by all of that. But it still gave me some feelings because it's weird. It's bumping into a man. Like I don't want to do this. It's like he's presented this situation. I had to use some energy, like psychological energy, to address. It sounds silly, but it's
It
just
is
like,
does sound silly. I find that really funny just because like that's the kind of interaction that I wouldn't have thought twice about. Like I would have just
well,
been
given
like,
his mean look and how awkward it was just like I just thought it was worth mentioning on this podcast.
oh,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah,
That's the most important thing. Most important thing we talked about today. I think.
yeah, yeah,
I love little anecdotes like that.
yeah.
Ah,
So
man,
yeah.
freaking old men. Gosh, get with the
Well, from
times,
his perspective,
Grandpa.
he might not have. Let's just say he didn't hear me say pardon me. Like let's go ahead and do that. He probably did not hear me say that because he was on the phone. But the second he gets bumped, what the? Oh my gosh! I'm in the middle of the road. Like I think that's what I would do if I were on the phone, not aware of my environment. I get bumped. Immediately, it's I'm assessing danger, right? Like, am I about? And then I go, oh my gosh, embarrassment. That would be it. It'd
Sure,
be
yeah.
like, am I in danger? And now I'm embarrassed with a sort of an apologetic. Oh, I'm my bad. Ah, gosh, I'm sorry. Like that's what would have come out of my mouth. So,
Right.
but his was more of a, oh my gosh, or at least the sort of you're a jerk look.
Uppity young man
Yeah,
bumping my good
which
hip.
I find that misinterpretation frustrating. Like the idea that you're causing issues, you're receiving natural feedback from the world, and
Did he
you're
say
going to
anything?
no.
Oh,
Well, I
okay.
just said
So
just getting through, just getting through.
so
Something
he
like that.
might not have been mad. He might have just had a mad old man face. Like
That
an
is true. A
annoyed
little bit of
some
confusion. I
yeah old
interpreted as anger.
right like old men's faces. Sometimes you can't tell whether they're just surprised or confused or a thing is happening to me, and they just have the same look on their face a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So it might have just been like confusion, or like you mentioned, I just got bumped, embarrassment, surprise, whatever, and it just he was on the phone, so he was distracted. So maybe those things came to him more slowly. He didn't say anything. Like if he would have raised his fist and said, "Oh, you young whippersnapper," all of that stuff,
Yeah.
then you
Yeah.
could definitely be more sure in your interpretation. But
You're right. He did not say anything. Yeah. So okay.
that's nice. Let's
All
let's
right.
talk again sometime
Let's do
on
that.
the podcast, the Third Space podcast. This
Let's do
one,
it
this
on
podcast,
this podcast in a space that is not
third,
mine or yours, but it's some
but it's
sort
in the
of
middle, in the sort of
yeah.
in the middle of us. I think.
Okay. Bye.
By the end.
The end.
Da, da,
Do do do
da,
do do
da,
do.
da. Over.